I was 23 when I found the letter, hidden in a box of Christmas ornaments my mother had asked me to retrieve from the attic. The envelope was yellowed with age, addressed to my sister Emma in my grandmother's elegant cursive. I shouldn't have opened it, but something about the way it had been deliberately concealed beneath layers of tissue paper made my hands move before my conscience could stop them. The words blurred as I read them once, twice, 3 times, each reading making my stomach sink further into a cold, hollow pit. Grandma Ruth had left everything to Emma and me equally. $50,000 each from her trust fund, meant to help us build our futures. The letter was dated 2 weeks before Grandma died, 5 years ago. I had been 18 then, Emma 21. We'd never seen a penny. My hands trembled as I descended the attic stairs, the letter clutched against my chest like evidence at a crime scene. The house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and my mother's muffled voice on the phone in the kitchen. According to YouTube analytics, 99% of viewers are not subscribed. That's a huge number. By subscribing the channel that is completely free, you'll help support the channel and never miss fresh content. I stood in the hallway, listening. No, she doesn't suspect anything, my mother was saying, her voice carrying that particular sweetness she used when she wanted something. Emma's been completely cut off for years now. She'll never know what she was entitled to. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. I stepped into the kitchen doorway, and my mother's eyes snapped to mine, widening for just a fraction of a second before her expression smoothed into practiced innocence. She ended her call quickly, too quickly. Sweetheart, did you find the ornaments? I held up the letter instead of answering. The color drained from her face. Where did you get that? Her voice had gone sharp, all pretense of warmth evaporating. Where you hid it, along with the truth, apparently? My voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant and cold. Grandma left us money, Emma and me, $50,000 each. My mother's jaw tightened. She set her phone down with deliberate care, and I watched her shift, watched her calculate. I'd seen this before, but never recognized it for what it was. The way she could transform herself depending on what she needed, who she needed to manipulate. Sit down, Megan. Let me explain. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why we never knew about this money. Why Emma thinks Grandma left everything to charity. Why I've been living paycheck to paycheck while you and Dad remodeled the kitchen and bought a new car and... The pieces were falling into place now, a cascade of memories recontextualizing themselves. The sudden financial improvements in my parents' life 5 years ago, the way they'd insisted Grandma's estate had been complicated and mostly debts. Your grandmother was not in her right mind at the end, my mother said, her voice taking on that reasonable, patient tone that had always made me feel like I was being irrational. That letter was written when she was heavily medicated. The trust fund existed, yes, but there were complications. Legal issues. Your father and I had to use those funds to settle her estate, pay off her debts. Stop lying. The words came out harder than I intended, and my mother actually flinched. Just stop. I can see the date on this letter. Grandma was completely lucid 2 weeks before she died. I was there. We all were. You don't understand how these things work, Megan. You've always been so naive, so quick to believe the best in people. She was shifting tactics now, moving from defense to offense. Is this what Emma put you up to? Did she contact you, poison you against us? The mention of Emma sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. Emma, who I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Emma, who my parents had slowly, methodically turned me against with whispered comments and carefully crafted stories. Emma, the troublemaker. Emma, the ungrateful daughter who'd abandoned the family. Emma, who'd tried to claim Grandma had promised her things that didn't exist. Oh God, Emma had known. Emma had tried to tell me. I remembered now, with horrible clarity, the last conversation we'd had. She'd called me crying, saying Mom and Dad had stolen from us, that Grandma had left us money they'd hidden. I'd defended our parents, called her delusional, told her she needed help. I'd chosen them over her, believed their version of events without question. Emma tried to tell me, didn't she? I said quietly. 3 years ago. That's why you made sure I cut her off. Your sister is disturbed, Megan. She's always been jealous of you, of our relationship with you. She would say anything to drive a wedge between us. My mother's voice had taken on a desperate edge now. Don't let her manipulate you like this. We've always taken care of you, always put you first. By stealing my inheritance? By stealing Emma's inheritance. We didn't steal anything. We're your parents. Everything we have is for you anyway, eventually. We just used those funds when we needed them, for the family, for yourselves. I felt something breaking inside me, some fundamental belief in the goodness of the people who'd raised me. You stole from your own mother's estate, from your own daughters, and then you made sure Emma and I were estranged so she couldn't tell me the truth. My father appeared in the doorway, still in his work clothes. He must have just gotten home. What's going on here? She found the letter, my mother said, and there was accusation in her voice, as if I'd committed the crime. My father's expression hardened. Megan, you need to understand. No. I backed toward the door, suddenly desperate to be out of this house, away from these people I no longer recognized. No, I don't need to understand anything from you. You're thieves, both of you. How dare you speak to us like that? My father's voice rose, booming through the kitchen. After everything we've done for you, we put a roof over your head, fed you, clothed you. That's called being a parent. It doesn't give you the right to steal from your own children, you ungrateful little... He stepped toward me, and my mother grabbed his arm. Let her go, she said coldly. Let her run to Emma. Let them commiserate together about what terrible parents we are. She'll come back when she needs something. She always does. The contempt in her voice was like a slap. I grabbed my purse from the hall table and walked out, my legs shaking so badly I could barely make it to my car. I drove without direction for 20 minutes before pulling into a coffee shop parking lot. My whole body was trembling. I pulled out my phone and stared at it for a long time before I found the courage to scroll through my blocked contacts. There it was, Emma's number, blocked 3 years ago, at my mother's gentle insistence. I unblocked it and typed out a message, deleting and rewriting it 4 times before settling on something simple. Emma, I found Grandma's letter. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? The 3 dots indicating she was typing appeared almost immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, where are you? She lived 2 hours away now, in a small apartment in a city I'd never visited. She'd invited me dozens of times before I'd cut her off, back when she was still trying to maintain our relationship despite everything. I told her where I was, and she said she'd meet me there in 2 hours. I sat in my car in the parking lot as the sun set, reading and rereading Grandma's letter. Her words were so full of love, so full of hope for our futures. She'd wanted us to use the money to pursue our dreams, to have opportunities she'd never had. She'd trusted my parents to execute her wishes, and they'd betrayed that trust without hesitation. When Emma's car pulled into the lot, I almost didn't recognize her. She'd cut her hair short and dyed it a warm auburn. She looked older, tired, but also stronger somehow, more herself. She got out of her car slowly, and we stood there in the parking lot, looking at each other across a distance that felt both vast and intimate. Hi, Meg, she said softly. I started crying. I'm so sorry. Emma, I'm so sorry. You tried to tell me and I... She crossed the space between us and pulled me into a hug. I know. It's okay. I know. We went inside the coffee shop and sat in a corner booth, and I listened as she told me her side of the story, how she'd found financial documents in the house 3 years ago that showed deposits into my parents' account matching the amounts from Grandma's trust, how they denied everything, called her crazy, threatened to have her committed if she kept making accusations, how they'd systematically turned the rest of the family against her, painting her as mentally unstable and vindictive. I tried so hard to get you to listen, she said, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she hadn't touched, but they'd already laid the groundwork. All those little comments over the years about how I was jealous of you, how I was always causing drama, they made sure that when I finally confronted them, you'd already believe I was the problem. I should have listened. I should have at least investigated. They're really good at this, Meg. They've probably been manipulating people their whole lives. She took a shaky breath. I blamed you for a long time, but I also understood. They're our parents. We're wired to trust them, to believe them. What do we do now? I asked. Emma pulled out a folder from her bag. I've been documenting everything for 3 years, every financial record I could get my hands on before they kicked me out. Every email, every text message. I consulted with a lawyer last year, but she said we'd need more evidence to make a case. The money was transferred to them as executors of the estate, so proving they misappropriated it is tricky. We spread the documents across the table, and I showed her the letter. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw Grandma's handwriting. "This helps," she said. "This proves intent." Combined with the financial records showing they deposited exactly $100,000 2 weeks after Grandma died, she trailed off, doing mental calculations. "We might have a case." "They'll fight us," I said. "They'll make it ugly." "I know." Emma met my eyes. "Are you ready for that?" I thought about my mother's contemptuous expression, my father's barely contained rage, the casual cruelty of stealing from their own children, and then lying about it for years. I thought about Grandma Ruth, who'd worked 2 jobs to save that money, who'd wanted nothing more than to help her granddaughters succeed. "Yes," I said, "I'm ready." But even as I said it, I felt a deep weariness. The idea of lawyers and court battles and family warfare made my stomach turn. Emma must have seen it on my face. "We don't have to decide tonight," she said gently. "We can just be sisters again first, if you want." I did want that. Desperately. Over the next few weeks, Emma and I rebuilt what our parents had broken. We met for coffee, for dinner, for long drives where we'd talk about everything and nothing. She told me about her life, her job as a graphic designer, her girlfriend Tara, whom I instantly liked. I told her about my struggles, my dead-end job, my crushing student loans that might have been paid off if I'd had the inheritance Grandma intended. I moved out of my parents' house and into a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford. My parents tried to contact me dozens of times, alternating between rage and manipulation. My mother left voicemails crying about how I was breaking her heart, how she'd given me everything, and this was how I repaid her. My father sent texts threatening to cut me off completely, as if he hadn't already stolen what was rightfully mine. I blocked them both. Emma and I consulted with her. Lawyer again, armed now with Grandma's letter. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, reviewed everything with a careful eye. "You have a case," she said finally. "Not a slam dunk, but viable. They'd likely settle before it got to court, to avoid the publicity and legal fees. But I have to warn you, litigation like this destroys families. Are you prepared for that?" Emma and I looked at each other. "Our family is already destroyed," I said. "They destroyed it when they stole from us." We were about to move forward, about to file the lawsuit, when karma intervened in a way we never could have anticipated. It started with a phone call from my Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. We hadn't spoken since I'd cut ties with my parents, and I almost didn't answer. "Megan, I need you to listen to me," she said without preamble. "I know about the trust fund. I know what your parents did." My heart started racing. "How?" "Because they tried to do the same thing to me." Her voice was tight with anger. "Mom, your Grandma Ruth. She left me a portion too. A smaller amount, but still. $20,000. Your parents told me it didn't exist, that Mom had nothing left by the end. I believed them because they were the executors, because they're my family, but I just found out the truth." "How did you find out?" "Your mother got drunk at a family gathering and let it slip to Aunt Carol. Bragged about how they'd managed the estate so well they'd been able to pocket some money for their retirement. Carol told me," Linda's voice cracked, "I can't believe my own sister would steal from me, from her own nieces, from her own mother's legacy." The family started unraveling after that. Aunt Carol confronted my parents at the next family dinner, and the whole thing exploded. Accusations flew. My father tried to bluster his way through it, but my mother crumbled under the pressure, admitting to borrowing some of the estate funds with plans to pay it back eventually. That admission was all we needed. Patricia Chen filed the lawsuit, and suddenly, it wasn't just Emma and me. It was Aunt Linda too, with her own lawyer and her own evidence. The family split down the middle, with some relatives believing my parents' claims that they'd only done what was necessary, while others sided with us. My parents hired their own lawyer, an expensive one they paid for with money that might have been part of the stolen funds. They tried to paint us as vindictive, greedy children who turned against them. But their story kept changing, contradicting itself. First they'd said there was no money. Then it was that the money had gone to debts. Then it was that they'd borrowed it temporarily. Each new version made them look worse. The case moved slowly through the legal system, and during those months, I watched my parents' life begin to collapse in ways that had nothing to do with the lawsuit. My father's business partner found out about the estate theft and started his own audit of their company finances, worried about what else might be hidden. He found discrepancies, nothing criminal, but enough to destroy their partnership and my father's reputation in the industry. My mother's friends, the ones she'd collected so carefully over the years, started distancing themselves. Nobody wanted to be associated with people who'd steal from their own children. The invitations to parties dried up. The book club stopped calling. The stress took its toll on both of them. My father developed high blood pressure and had to be hospitalized for chest pains. My mother looked haggard every time I saw her across the courtroom, her carefully maintained appearance cracking like old paint. 8 months after we filed the lawsuit, their lawyer approached Patricia with a settlement offer. They would return the full amount of the trust fund, $100,000 split between Emma and me, plus the $20,000 to Aunt Linda, plus interest, plus our legal fees. In exchange, we would sign an agreement not to pursue any further claims and to keep the settlement confidential. Emma and I met at her apartment to discuss it. Tara made us dinner while we pored over the documents. "It's not just about the money anymore," Emma said quietly. "Part of me wants them to admit publicly what they did, to face real consequence." "They are facing consequences," I pointed out. "Dad's business is ruined. Mom's lost all her friends. The whole family knows what they did. But they'll never actually acknowledge it. They'll never apologize." I knew she was right. Even if we went to trial and won, my parents would never truly accept responsibility. They'd go to their graves believing they were the victims, that we were the ungrateful ones. "We can't make them be the parents we deserved," I said. "We can't make them feel remorse. They're not capable of feeling. But we can take the money Grandma wanted us to have and build the lives she dreamed of for us." Emma wiped her eyes. "When did you get so wise?" "Since I got my sister back." We accepted the settlement. The money came through 6 weeks later, deposited into our accounts in 2 equal installments of $50,000 each, plus interest that brought it to nearly $58,000. Aunt Linda got her portion too, with the same interest. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and sad and strangely hollow. We'd won, but what we'd won back was something that should never have been taken in the first place. The money couldn't repair the years of estrangement from Emma, couldn't undo the realization that my parents were not who I'd believed them to be. But slowly, something else began to grow in that hollow space. Not happiness, not exactly, but something closer to peace. I used the money to pay off my student loans and go back to school for my master's degree, something I'd always wanted but never thought I could afford. Emma bought a small house with Tara and started her own graphic design business. Aunt Linda took her portion and donated half to the hospice that had cared for Grandma Ruth in her final days, then used the rest for a trip to Ireland she'd always dreamed of. We were using the money the way Grandma had intended, building our futures, pursuing our dreams. My parents moved to Florida a year after the settlement, a quiet retreat from the social disgrace they'd faced. They sent me a Christmas card with no return address, just a generic, "Wishing you joy this holiday season," in my mother's handwriting. No apology, no acknowledgement, nothing. I threw it away. 2 years after I'd found the letter in the attic, Emma and I stood in front of Grandma Ruth's grave. We'd driven out together on a cold November morning, bringing flowers and the photo album we'd made of all the things we'd accomplished with our inheritance. "I wish I could thank her," Emma said, placing the flowers by the headstone. "I wish she knew we finally got what she wanted us to have." "I think she knows," I said. I believed it too. Somewhere, Grandma Ruth knew that her final gift to us had eventually found its way home, that the granddaughters she'd loved had survived the betrayal and found each other again. We stood there in silence for a while, just being together. The wind rustled through the bare trees, and I thought about karma, about justice, about how sometimes the universe rights itself in unexpected ways. My parents hadn't been struck by lightning or faced criminal charges. Their punishment was quieter, more insidious. The slow erosion of their reputation, their relationships, their peace of mind. They'd stolen money, but they'd lost so much more. They'd lost their daughters, their extended family, their standing in the community, their sense of themselves as good people. They'd have to live the rest of their lives knowing what they'd done, even if they'd never admit it. Emma and I, on the other hand, had lost our illusions but gained something more valuable: truth, freedom, and each other. As we walked back to the car, Emma slipped her arm through mine. "Tara and I are thinking about having a baby," she said. We wanted to ask if you'd be the godmother. I stopped walking and turned to look at her. Her eyes were bright with hope and happiness. With a future that was finally hers to build, I'd be honored, I said, and meant it with my whole heart. We drove home as the sun broke through the clouds, talking about nursery colors and baby names, and all the ways we'd make sure the next generation knew they were loved, truly loved, without conditions or manipulations. We'd teach them that family was about more than blood, that trust was sacred, that truth always found its way to the surface eventually. The money Grandma Ruth left us bought us our education, our homes, our opportunities. But the real inheritance was something my parents couldn't steal and couldn't understand. The knowledge that we were strong enough to survive betrayal, brave enough to seek truth, and worthy of the unconditional love Grandma had always shown us. In the end, karma didn't need our help. It never does. We just had to step back and let the truth do its work. Let the natural consequence of my parents' actions unfold. We didn't seek revenge. We simply refused to protect them from the fallout of their own choices. And that, I learned, was more powerful than any retribution we could have planned. I carry Grandma's letter with me still, tucked into my wallet where I can touch it when I need to remember where I came from and how far I've traveled. Sometimes I read it, her words of love and hope, and I feel her presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. "Build your dreams, my beautiful girls," she'd written. "You deserve every happiness." We're doing exactly that, Grandma. Finally, we're doing exactly that.